Welcome to this Arnall-Culliford knitwear tutorial. Today's tutorial is all about dip stitches. These are a fantastically fun group of stitches that create extra texture on the surface of your fabric. This tutorial is part of our Boost Your Knitting series, 12 designs to upgrade your knitting skills, each teaching you a new technique with a video tutorial and photo tutorials in the book. To find out more about Boost Your Knitting, you can click on the link up here and visit our website acknitwear.co.uk. This is Thea Colman's beautiful apple swizzle hat, which is the design for this month's Boost Your Knitting, and it features dip stitches in the middle of a little cable pattern. Dip stitches are when you work into the fabric below your needles. So instead of knitting into the next stitch on your needles, you insert your needle into the fabric below and pull a loop of yarn through from the back. That leaves a strand of yarn over the surface of the fabric, which adds real interest to your knitting. I'm going to walk you through 3 different dip stitches. I'm going to walk you through one that shows a right leaning loop, one showing a left leaning loop, and then the dip down 3 stitch used in the apple swizzle hat, which is worked immediately below the next stitch on the needles. So starting with the right leaning loop, I'm going to show you how to work a right leaning loop that's worked into the stitch 2 stitches to the left and 5 rows below the next stitch on your needles. So we've come to the right spot in the pattern, we count 1, 2 stitches to the left, and we're then counting 5 rows below. You do this by looking for the hole in the middle of the stitch. So there's the one immediately below the stitch on the needles. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you put your right needle tip straight through that stitch. If you're at all unsure about where it should go into the stitch, you're looking for it to be just below the purl bump along the top of the stitch, because that's the top of the loop kind of hill of the stitch. So you put the right needle straight through the fabric, you wrap the yarn around the needle as normal, and then you pull that loop through. When you're working a dip stitch, you're not wanting to pucker the fabric. You want the loops to lie flat over the ungathered fabric. So just take a moment to pull that loop so that the fabric isn't squished up. And that completes the dip down stitch that we've worked there to make a right leaning loop. We're now going to work along in pattern because right and left leaning loops are often worked in pairs. Again, just check as you go that you're not stretching the fabric, it's not being pulled up too much. And we would now be ready to work a left leaning loop. So that was the right one that we've done. And we're now going to work a left leaning loop. And here we're working 2 stitches to the right and 6 rows below. We worked 5 rows below when we worked the previous one, but now these stitches have another row worked on top of them, so it's 6 below. So 2 stitches to the right, that's 1, 2, and then we count down 6 rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's a bit hidden, and 6 is into the same hole that we worked into previously. And here it's slightly awkward because you have to put your right needle tip through and you're coming right back on yourself. So just be sure you don't slip a stitch off the end of the needle as you do that, but stab it straight through the fabric, wrap your yarn round and pull the loop back through. You can see we've now put a right leaning and a left leaning loop through the fabric, and we can continue to the end of the row. Where you've worked into the fabric below, you've now added 2 extra stitches because those loops have been pulled through and you still worked the original stitch. So quite often on the following row or round, you might work a decrease, or you might do a few rounds and then work decreases afterwards. I'm just going to work back across that row so that you can see how it looks once you've done a little bit more knitting on top. And that's how our pair of dipped stitches look once we've worked back across them. As I say, you would quite often on the next row do a decrease to remove those extra stitches, but it's quite a pleasing added texture on the fabric. I'm now going to show you how to work the dip down 3 stitch that's used in Thea Colman's lovely apple swizzle hat. We've been working purl stitches, so the yarn's at the front of the work. The first task is to take it to the rear behind the needles, and we're now going to work into the stitch that is 3 rows below the next stitch on the left needles. So here's the next stitch on the left needles, and that would be 1 row below, 2, 3. So we're going to put our right needle tips straight through from front to back that stitch and wrap the yarn around as if to knit and pull the loop through. We want to allow that loop to lie flat on the surface of the fabric without puckering what's happening underneath. We're now going to bring the yarn to the front between the needle tips as if we were going to purl. We're not going to purl though, we're going to use that as like a yarn over the needles. And we're then going to go back into that same hole that is 3 rows below the next stitch on the needle. We've gone straight through it front to back, wrap the yarn around and pull that loop through. And again, we're drawing the loops up so that they are lying nice and flat on the surface of the fabric without squishing up what's underneath. So you can see there that we've got 3 new loops on the needles. That's the previous stitch. This is the first loop we pulled through. Then this is the one when we brought the yarn to the front between the needle tips and it went over the back. And then the third one there is the loop we've just pulled through from the back. Then to complete the dip down 3, we drop the next stitch off the needle tips, and it'll be caught when it reaches the row below because that's where those loops have been pulled through. It won't go any further. Don't worry, your yarn won't unravel. And then bring the yarn to the front, ready to work the next stitch. Let me walk you through that once more. The yarn's at the front, we take it to the back. We then put the right needle tip through the stitch that is 3 rows below, 1, 2, 3. Go straight through from front to back. Wrap the yarn around that needle and pull it through. So you've got a loop. Bring the yarn to the front to create the second loop. And then go back into the same hole and pull through your third loop. Adjust to make sure they're all lying neatly on the surface of the fabric, and then slip the next stitch off the needles. Bring the yarn to the front, ready to work on in pattern. Again here we've slipped 1 stitch off the needles and made 3 new loops, so we have worked increases, and later on in the pattern those increases will be decreased back out again so that we don't just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Thank you for watching our tutorial on dip stitches. I hope you're feeling inspired to go and add lots of texture to all your forthcoming projects. If you'd like to find out more about Boost Your Knitting or purchase yarn for one of the designs in the collection, then do click the link to visit our website up here. And you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Gen AC Knitwear, so that you can be absolutely certain of not missing any of our forthcoming knitting tutorials. Thanks ever so much for watching.